Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we plunge into a whole stack of diverse sources, really trying to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and the surprising insights, basically giving you the shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we're setting our sights on, well, the world of reality television, specifically one of Netflix's most talked about, maybe most controversial social experiments. Too Hot to Handle, you know, the one gorgeous resorts, even more gorgeous people, and those famously strict, no touching rules. It's hooked millions, season after season. So for this deep dive, we're really dissecting everything. We've got the burning question about its future season 7. Anyone? We'll look at the show's mechanics, how it actually works or maybe doesn't work. We've got candid stuff from former contestants, their experiences. Yeah, some pretty sharp critical takes on the format and its impact. Our mission here is to navigate all these intriguing waters and offer you a really nuanced understanding. We want to look at the future, sure, but also the fascinating and sometimes, let's be honest, problematic flaws of Too Hot to Handle. So let's get started. All right, let's dive right into the big one. The question that has fans, well, everywhere, really on the edge of their seats. You see it all over social media. The forums, are we going to see a season 7 of Too Hot to Handle? I mean, despite, varying opinions on how good the recent seasons have been, the fan interest still seems incredibly high. So what's the word? Is there any official word from Netflix, or is it maybe more about the strategic silence, what's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating situation, actually, because we're getting very mixed signals, which just fuels the speculation, right? On one hand, there's definitely a buzz, a palpable buzz. If you look at places like YouTube, for example, you see trailers, maybe fan-made, maybe leaks, who knows, but trailers for potential new seasons or just updates on old contestants. They still get huge views, lots of anticipation. And maybe more concretely, Season 6 was, well, Netflix called it a sizzling success. It actually landed right in their top 10 most popular TV shows in the U.S. and stayed there for weeks. Now, in the streaming world, that kind of performance, that usually just screams renewal. In fact, there were rumors floating around. You hear them in fan groups, industry whispers, maybe suggesting filming could even roll as soon as, like, October 2024. Now, if that timeline was accurate, it would mean production is, probably already deep into casting, location scouting, the whole deal.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a pretty strong case for renewal then. Almost a no-brainer if you're just looking at those viewership numbers, the top 10 lists. But then you mentioned mixed signals. What's the other side of this coin? Why wouldn't Netflix just be shouting about a renewal if it was such a hit?
Exactly. And that's where it gets tricky. When you look at Netflix's usual patterns, how they handle renewals for their big franchises, there's this silence. It's noticeable, almost deafening, you could say. There's an article from National World that really points this out well. It notes that for previous seasons, the official renewal announcement usually came about a year before the new season actually dropped. So season 6 came out July 2024. If they were aiming for a similar slot, say July 2025 for a season 7, well, logically, we probably should have heard something official by now. This is this long silence. It's pretty unusual for a show that's consistently hit that top 10 mark. It definitely suggests they're maybe taking a pause, being more deliberate, maybe for strategic reasons.
Right. So it's not just this standard waiting game. It feels like there might be something deeper going on here. What are some of those potential strategic reasons Netflix might be holding back? Or they may be pushing other stuff that could be taking Too Hot to Handle's usual spot?
Well, yeah, this silence could point to a couple of different things happening with Netflix's bigger picture strategy for reality dating. One really strong possibility is they're taking a break, maybe just a temporary one, from Too Hot to Handle specifically to diversify, to spread out their bets in the reality dating space. They've been super active launching other new dating shows, right? Shows they want different formats, different angles to appeal to, different audience tastes. We've seen Cheat, Unfinished Business, which have that deception angle, Sneaky Links, Dating After Dark, more about digital age dating. And it's not just new shows. They're putting money into bringing back other popular ones too, like Love is Blind UK, huge fan base there, and The Ultimatum, Queer Love, which definitely brought a fresh, important perspective. So this push for variety might mean they don't want to rely just on one big dating show anymore. They're maybe building more of an ecosystem.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, the diversification strategy. It's classic business, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But what about the other angle? Is there a chance the audience itself, despite those top 10 numbers, is maybe signaling they need a break?
Absolutely. And this is where you really see the value of direct fan feedback. Yeah. There's a really strong feeling, especially if you dig into places like Reddit, that the show's popularity might actually be sort of quietly declining. even if the overall viewership numbers still look pretty solid. A lot of fans who've been watching from the start feel the format's gotten a bit stale, that it really needs a major revamp, a shakeup, to get that original spark back before it returns. And look, that's not uncommon for reality shows that go on for a while. The novelty wears off, right? The formula starts feeling repetitive if they don't bring in fresh ideas or genuine surprises. So this silence from Netflix, it could very well be them weighing these kinds of criticisms, which are pretty consistent, against the show's track record and recent success. They're likely asking themselves, is a break in a big retool actually better for the show's long-term health than just rushing out another season that might feel tired to the audience?
Huh. That's a really fascinating tension, isn't it? You've got the show hitting the top 10, clearly massive viewership, people are watching. But Netflix is quiet, maybe diversifying, maybe listening to that fan fatigue, that call for changes. It really makes you wonder, what's the core strategic dilemma Netflix is facing here? And what does that tell us about how they handle content longevity in general?
Yeah, I think this situation really captures that constant balancing act for Netflix. It's the immediate win of a top 10 hit versus thinking about the long-term health of a format that, even if it was successful, might be prone to getting old for viewers. It suggests they might be pivoting more towards diversification rather than just sort of doubling down on a premise that might be running out of steam creatively. They're probably doing a complex calculation for production costs, marketing spend, versus the maybe diminishing returns of a predictable format. How does that stack up against the potential of innovating or bringing in something totally new and just as sticky? For a platform like Netflix, keeping subscribers interested is everything, and that often means offering novelty, variety, even if it means putting a proven but maybe creatively tired show on the shelf for a bit.
That's a really sharp insight. It's not just about what's hot right now, but what keeps people subscribed next year, the year after. Okay, so before we dig deeper into that fan feedback and the potential revamps, let's maybe rewind a bit. Let's revisit the basic premise of Too Hot to Handle, especially as we look at how much it's maybe changed or drifted from what it originally set out to do. What was that core idea, and how's it held up over the seasons?
Right, the application form itself is actually a great place to start. It literally highlights its groundbreaking format, saying it turns traditional dating norms on their head. The challenge, the core concept, is simple on the surface, but, incredibly hard for the people they cast. They take a group of attractive singles, often people who admit they're commitment phobic, put them in this amazing luxury beach resort. But here's the twist. They're strictly forbidden from any sort of sexual activity. And that means everything. No kissing, no heavy petting, not even self-gratification. There's a big prize pot, initially $100,000, later bumped up to $200 in season 3. Hang in there. But money gets deducted for every single rule break. The show's stated goal, in its own words, is to basically force contestants to prioritize emotional connection over just physical stuff. It frames itself as a television social experiment, trying to alter modern-day dating behaviors and push for more substantial romantic bonds. And overseeing it all is Lana, the AI, described with that non-traditional table lamp-like appearance. She's the digital overlord, watching everything, enforcing rules, and taking away that prize money, ruthlessly.
It's a brilliant concept on paper, almost mischievous, right? And at the start, it seemed like that hook the surprise element really worked.
Oh, absolutely. The early seasons leaned heavily into that surprise, and it was super effective. The casting team did a great job finding people who genuinely thought they were signing up for, a totally different show, maybe like a wild party, hookup fest. That led to those classic moments, those shocked reactions when Lana dropped the bomb about the real rules, often right in the middle of some pool party makeout session. Those moments of pure disbelief, the frustration, the often hilarious ways they tried to cope that was key to the show's early appeal. It's humor. You could feel that raw tension. But, like you hear a lot on Reddit, that surprise element just became less believable in the later seasons. The show got too famous. The premise was out there. So the type of contestant started shifting. Instead of genuinely clueless people, you started getting applicants who were maybe too tame, or more likely people who came in with premeditated strategies. They knew the rules, they thought about how to play the game. That potentially made their reactions, their struggles, feel less authentic. That raw shock just faded. Maybe some of the magic faded with it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Once the secret's out, you can't really put it back. But beyond the contestants knowing the deal, how did the show's producers maybe contribute to undermining that original groundbreaking premise, especially around enforcing the rules and, the actual stakes involved?
Right, and this is where a lot of the criticism comes in, especially from places like The Guardian. They really took the show to task, accusing it of bungling its promising premise because of what they called producer cowardice. The main argument was basically that the producers got scared. They worried that if there wasn't enough risque action, viewers would just tune out, that the show would be too boring without people hooking up. And this fear, the critics argue, led directly to things like the green light watches. These watches they'd sometimes give out, often after someone supposedly showed emotional growth or abstained for a while. They basically gave couples a sanctioned break from the rules, permission to be intimate without losing money. The Guardian argued this wasn't just a small change. It fundamentally weakened the core challenge. It turned this strict experiment into more of a game where you could earn rewards for breaking the rules, essentially. It just eroded that central tension, the show's unique selling point.
So it wasn't just the contestants evolving, the rules themselves got kind of bendy, compromising the experiment. What about the money itself? Was $100,000 or even $200,000 really enough to keep people in line, especially as the show went on?
That's another key point. The prize money, yeah, it started to lose its punch for a lot of contestants. The Guardian article highlights this too, noting that quite a few participants just weren't particularly fussed about the $100,000. Francesca Farrago, probably one of the show's biggest breakout stars, is often used as an example. Reportedly, she can make way more from a few Instagram posts or brand deals than she stood to win from the entire show. When that happens, it just dramatically lessens the stakes for many of them, especially when you compare it to other reality shows, like MTV's Are You the One? That show famously had $1 million prize, that kind of money. It definitely makes contestants, as The Guardian put it, more feral and competitive. They are laser-focused on the cash. And the Tribune's critique of Season 3 echoed this, calling the show unbelievable and at worst exploitative. They pointed out it often felt like a roller coaster with no clear destination because the rules kept changing seemingly on a whim. Money could suddenly be won back. People who got kicked off might just reappear. It made it really hard for viewers to feel invested in any consistent consequences.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, especially thinking about that original mission fostering deeper emotional connections by stopping the physical stuff. If the format is shifting like this, from a surprise experiment to something everyone knows about, with rules that bend, even allowing green light hookups, how does that actually impact the core mission? It feels like a major contradiction. I mean, Lana, the AI, was meant to be the strict enforcer of that mission. But then you hear from Reddit users that ideas like Bad Lana in one season were pretty useless after a couple of episodes. The AI overlord wasn't so scary. Yet behind the scenes, you have contestants like Lou, Kayla, Seb talking about this producer Katie as their mom, their babysitter, even their therapist. Lou even said Katie would turn a fart into a shit, basically blowing up small issues into huge camera-worthy drama.
That's a brilliant way to put it, that contradiction. It really highlights the blurred lines between trying to foster genuine emotional growth and just making dramatic TV. You have Lana, the cold AI, making the money deductions. But then you have human producers like Katie, who are clearly managing this intense emotional pressure cooker, probably ramping up drama when needed for the storyline, and also acting as these surrogate counselors for contestants who are young, often overwhelmed. That must create a really weird psychological dynamic for them. Lana's maybe fading authority. The introduction of green lights, it all suggests the social experiment part maybe took a back seat to just needing compelling television moments. That original premise, so clean and, groundbreaking, seems like it's constantly fighting against the basic demands of reality TV to live drama, keep viewers hooked. And sometimes it feels like that fight happens at the expense of the show's own stated purpose. It's like this tension becomes almost another character on the show, the invisible hand shaping everything.
That duality, Lana's tech strictness versus Katie's human touch, raises a big question about how we as viewers perceive the show's authenticity. What are audiences saying about these changes? Are they asking for things to go in a different direction? Because with all these critiques and the show's identity seeming to shift, that audience feedback must be critical for its survival.
Oh, definitely. And the audience feedback, especially in those really candid Reddit discussions, consistently points to casting as a major, maybe the major, flaw in recent seasons. You see users talking about a declining popularity, and they mostly blame what they call boring people with lackluster or even dumb personalities. It almost always gets compared back to Season 2's cast, People really felt they were more charismatic, maybe smarter. You had Melissa, Chase, Cam, Emily. They created memorable drama and what felt like real connections. There's this strong growing feeling that the later seasons just featured too many cloud attention seekers who were just there to self-promote and nothing else. And this feeling gets kind of validated when you see contestants who've been on or are known for faked everything and plotted on other reality shows. Like Chase Demore and Georgia Hasarati on Perfect Match, their behavior there was widely seen as pretty inauthentic. When viewers know that history, it really undermines the idea that this is a genuine social experiment. Plus, there's another common critique. The show often seems to focus on the same people, usually the ones who couple up early, and then it just leaves the single people in the dust. Sometimes they even stop bombshells from picking singles, which just limits the potential for new dynamics and makes the whole narrative feel a bit controlled.
Okay, that's a pretty clear picture of the casting issue. So people feel the contestants aren't authentic or maybe just aren't as engaging. What kind of solutions are fans throwing out there? Are there any specific revamp ideas that are getting a lot of buzz, things that could maybe fix these problems?
Yeah, there are definitely ideas floating around. One of the most popular ones, you see it all over Reddit, and it gets mentioned in articles like one from Collider, is the idea of an all-veterans season. Kind of like how The Bachelor has Bachelor in Paradise. The arguments for it are pretty compelling. For viewers, it would definitely be entertaining to see familiar faces back. But more than that, it could be a chance to show who grew from the retreat. It offers potential for real redemption arcs. Like imagine someone like Chase Demore, who is seen as a well-known player, coming back to maybe prove all his haters wrong. Or Holly Scarfone, who spent a ton of prize money, maybe returning to show she's not as selfish and can actually take Lana seriously this time. Plus, this format could create totally new dynamics by letting alums from different seasons interact, which we haven't really seen. It gives the show a built-in history that the regular seasons just don't have.
An all-veteran season? Yeah, I can see the appeal. Taps into that existing fan base, brings back familiar drama, but doesn't that just introduce another layer of, well, fakeness? If these people are already reality TV pros, wouldn't that make the authenticity problem even worse?
That is exactly the big counter-argument. A Reddit user, Prebiotis, made this exact point, saying that many of these alums know how reality TV production works inside and out. And because of that, they would fake every single reaction. It speaks to that meta-awareness these experienced reality stars have. They know about edits, they know about story arcs, they know how to play to the camera. It makes capturing genuine spontaneity really, really hard. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword. The familiarity is tempting, but their savviness could make the experiment feel even more staged. Beyond the All-Stars idea, though, there's another pretty bold suggestion. One Reddit user just flat out said the English version is the worst compared to the international ones. They argued Netflix should maybe focus on making new seasons for the other franchises like Latino, Brazil, Germany. Apparently, according to this user, those versions are often more creative. They introduce different concepts, rule twists, things like a 24-hour free pass for a couple, a green suite for special connections, maybe even spies reporting rule breaks, or contestants earning a green light on your own through personal growth. These kinds of innovations could bring some much-needed freshness and genuine surprise back into the format. Stop it feeling so predictable.
Those ideas definitely point to a real desire for innovation from the audience. But looking beyond just casting and format tweaks, are there bigger picture critiques about the show's whole narrative? Like how it tells stories and portrays the contestants and their relationships?
Well, absolutely. The Guardian, for example, criticized what they called a lack of heart in some seasons. They felt that contestants' personal growth, their developments, were often just stated by the narrator, rather than something viewers actually witnessed unfold naturally. You'd be told someone had this life-changing breakthrough, but then they'd seem to completely forget about it in the next scene or episode. That inconsistency makes it hard to really buy into anyone's journey. The article also mentioned the narrator, who's almost a character herself, often sounded like she was enjoying an entirely different, far more compelling show than the one viewers were seeing. Creates a weird disconnect. And the finales, widely criticized for being anticlimactic. Often everyone gets named a winner, even if they broke rules left and right, which kind of dilutes the whole idea of reward and punishment, makes the rules feel a bit pointless. The Tribune's critique of Season 3 went even deeper, calling it unbelievable and at worst exploitative. They argued it subtly stigmatizes sex, painting it as this automatic barrier to emotional connection. Which is weird, right? When the show deliberately casts people looking for hookups. They also pointed out how it often reinforces heteronormativity and traditionalism, and how relationships play out, and how it seems to manipulate contestants just for punchlines, rather than exploring their experiences in a meaningful way.
That's a really crucial point. If the show's format, its casting, draw these kinds of significant criticisms, but it still hits the Netflix top 10, what does that tell us about what audiences actually want from trash reality TV? What about that balance between wanting authentic connection versus just wanting manufactured drama? It seems like viewers are kind of caught, right? We want real relationships to root for, but we also can't resist the pull of those dramatic, sometimes over-the-top scenarios. It suggests that even when we're criticizing the flaws, there's still some core entertainment value keeping people tuned in. Maybe the act of critiquing is part of the fun, that shared experience of watching and judging.
Exactly. That paradox really highlights a fundamental tension in how we consume entertainment today. We, the viewers, seem caught between wanting genuine, relatable human stories, the social experiment part, and that undeniable, almost magnetic pull of what gets labeled trash TV. These shows, with their manufactured drama, the heightened emotions, the often outrageous behavior, they offer kind of escapism, and maybe a platform for social commentary too, even if it's just through criticizing it. The fact that Too Hot to Handle keeps doing well, despite the flaws people point out, suggests that for many viewers, the entertainment value of the spectacle, that guilty pleasure element, maybe outweighs the perceived lack of authenticity or the show's own stated goals. It's a testament to how much we're drawn to human drama, however it's constructed.
That's a profound thought, and it leads us perfectly into the next part of our discussion. Let's shift focus from the show's mechanics and critiques to the actual human stories, the contestants themselves. Because they're more than just characters, right? They're real people whose lives get totally turned upside down by this experience. So what really happens during filming, and maybe more importantly, after Too Hot to Handle for these reality stars?
Yeah, the journey for these contestants is often genuinely life-altering, and in ways they really didn't expect, ways that go way beyond just the filming period. Lou from season 5, for instance, he talked really openly about how his life just became completely different. He used to dream of being a pro footballer or maybe even like a Michael Jackson-style performer. But after the show, he found himself modeling deep in the LA event scene, making money in different ways. It was a complete shock and surprise to him. It just shows how unpredictable reality TV fame can be. Similarly, Seb from season 4, he was really candid. He said he went on the show after his motorsport career kind of hit a wall. He saw it strategically as a way to market grow a platform, build a profile. He never actually expected to find love there. Kayla, also from season 4, she already lived in that LA scene, so she felt she had an advantage. She knew how to spot fake people. But even she said people treated her totally differently after the show aired. Suddenly, people who ignored her before knew her name, wanted her attention. And the Collider article sums it up, well, it confirms. This show really does have the power to create some of the biggest reality stars and social media influencers out there. People like Harry Jowsey, Francesca Farrago, they've really used the show as a launchpad into a whole different level of fame and business.
It's incredible how fast their lives change. But amidst all that craziness, the cameras, the manufactured drama, some of them actually do find lasting love. What is it that helps those connections survive, do you think? And what makes others fall apart once the cameras are gone?
It really is a tale of two extremes, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got Emily Miller and Cam Holmes from season 2. They are the standout success story, almost defying the odds. They're the only couple still together after, nearly 5 years now, which is amazing. They moved in, they just welcomed their son Reggie back in June 2024. They're even hinting about maybe having another baby. They're building a real family life. And what's interesting is they both went into the show expecting just hookups. They openly said they thought they were terrible at relationships, but somehow Lana's retreat, against all their own expectations, it actually seemed to work for them. It forced them to connect differently. And then you also have Kayla Richard and Seb Melrose from season 4. They're still happily dating too. So it shows that the show's premise, for some people, can actually lead to something real and lasting. But then you have the flip side. People like Melinda Berry and Marvin Anthony, the winners of season 2. They had what looked like a serious relationship on the show, but it failed shortly after the cast left the retreat. And that really highlights the massive challenges of keeping that bond going once you're out of the bubble. The cameras stop rolling, the prize money's dealt with, that structured, isolated retreat environment is gone. Suddenly you're dealing with fame, social media, real-life pressures. Even the show's creator, Katie, kind of acknowledged this. She acted as a babysitter and therapist, helping them navigate that intense post-show world. It underscores just how deep the emotional toll can be and how intense the whole experience is. So yeah, the show can spark something, but keeping it alive in the real world, that's a whole other ballgame.
That's fascinating. It suggests the artificial environment, the retreat itself, paradoxically, can either forge super strong bonds by removing distractions, or maybe once that structure is gone, it reveals just how fragile some connections formed under that pressure really are. So, what do you think truly fosters those lasting connections, and what makes others crumble?
Well, looking at the outcomes, it seems like a couple of things might be key. First, how much the individuals actually internalize that core lesson. The no physical intimacy means deeper connection idea. And maybe even more importantly, how well their actual personalities, their values, their lives outside the show align. Emily and Cam, for example, they talked openly about their struggles during the show. They seemed to actively work through them, embracing that emotional growth Lana was pushing for. So when they left, they'd maybe already built a foundation that could handle the outside world. For others, maybe that intense, isolated bubble where producers are guiding things, creating drama, maybe it fosters a kind of heightened romance that just isn't sustainable. Once the cameras, the prize money focus, the producer nudges are gone, maybe some connections just can't survive the switch back to normal life without those external things holding them together. It really makes you wonder if the experiment just forces temporary changes or if it could actually lead to lasting shifts in how people relate.
That's a really sharp point. And it brings us to another fascinating angle, what actually goes on behind the scenes, the production side of things. Contestants have shared some pretty surprising details about logistics, about emotions, stuff that really pulls back the curtain.
Oh yeah, the reality behind the camera is often way more complex than the polished version we see. Like, contestants Lou and Seb talked about how dates were filmed. They mentioned B-roll days, basically. Days where they just shot extra footage, scenic shots, maybe contestant reactions, separately from the actual date itself. That means a lot of what looks like spontaneous interaction might have been carefully set up or reshot for the camera. And the money, even though some contestants weren't fussed, for others it played a huge role. Seb revealed he was actually offered $25,000 cash to just leave the show at one point. He turned it down because he wanted to stay for Christine, but his own dad apparently called him stupid for passing up the money. It shows that prize pot, even if relatively small compared to, say, Squid Game's massive prize, still held real weight for some. The living situations, too, weren't always the perfect luxury advertised. Lou talked about his Season 5 boat experience, which sounded pretty cramped. Season 4 was supposed to be in Drake's villa on these gorgeous Greek islands, Tinos and Kos. But apparently, production didn't just use the villa. They actively tore down parts of it to build studio walls and even fake stairs, just for filming purposes, creating an illusion that wasn't quite real. And then there's the really raw stuff from early seasons. Apparently, girls used to just walk around naked like before camera in the villa. That got banned later because the camera crew complained. Season 1 allegedly saw contestants smashing like the last day near the end, which led producers in later seasons to separate people into different villas and ban alcohol, although famously contestants still found ways to sneak it in, showing a bit of defiance.
Wow, so the intensity wasn't just about the rules, it was the whole environment. Were there specific emotional moments or fights that played out very differently once the cameras stopped rolling?
Absolutely. Lou talked very openly about that big confrontation he had with James the accountant in Season 5. On screen, it looked intense. Lou really lost his shit, accusing James of meddling in his relationship when James couldn't keep his own together. Super dramatic. But now, Lou just laughs about it, says they're actually good mates today. It really shows how that pressurized, camera-heavy environment can amplify conflict, create these huge reactions that make great TV, but don't necessarily reflect the real long-term relationship between people once they're out of that pressure cooker. They manage to get past the on-screen drama. And then there's navigating the whole post-show fame thing, especially social media. That sounds like a whole other level of pressure, often pretty brutal. Contestants step out into a world where, as Lou put it, people are just saying shit for clicks. Makes it incredibly hard to know who's genuine and who's just trying to get attention off your name. There's this relentless pressure to self-promote, do brand collabs, make the right moves on social media to capitalize on that fleeting fame. Some find it really hard to keep up. Others admit they're just bad with social. They struggle with that constant performance. Even the cast group chats, which probably started as a way to bond over the shared experience, often blow up after the show actually airs. People see their edits, hate starts to happen, and real-world friction develops based on how they were portrayed. Even just trying to network with other alums can be tricky. DMs go crazy, messages get missed, and then perceived slights like not replying to someone can cause misunderstandings and more online drama. It sounds exhausting.
Man, those insights really do pull back the curtain. It shows just how complex, how contradictory that whole reality star journey is. It's so much more than what we see. And of course, with any reality show, there are always those personalities, those moments, those little anecdotes that just stick in your mind.
Oh, totally. The show definitely attracts some memorable characters, like Ethan from season 3, a bombshell arrival. He's famous for getting picked off after only 4 days. Why? Because he had an outburst on night 1, apparently about not getting his requested special diet of chicken and rice, and instead finding pinks and blankets in his room. Producer Katie, though, still apparently loves Ethan and tells that story. James from season 4, the accountant, the guy Lou clashed with, is described off-camera as a total gentle giant, a super nice guy, but also known for having a massive appetite. Apparently, he'd order like 5 burgers, 7 fries, milkshake whenever someone else was paying. Just a funny, relatable detail behind the intense on-screen persona. Nathan from season 2, the handsome model. He apparently felt his career was really negatively impacted. Fucked with him big time, was the quote by how he was portrayed. But he also holds that unique title, the first TH contestant ever kicked off and then brought back later in the same season. Shows the producers saw something compelling there. And Lou himself, his background is interesting too. Comes from a family of boxers. His dad was an army boxing instructor. He actually considered doing misfits boxing, the influencer boxing thing. But he admits he struggles with trash talk and has a bit of a temper, which he thinks might hold him back. Just shows that clash between real personality and the kind of performance needed for something like that.
Those personal stories definitely add another dimension, bring it to life beyond just the edited show. Okay, let's broaden it out again now. Let's think about the show's overall impact, maybe on reality TV as a whole, and how it might reflect wider things happening in society. What does Too Hot to Handle's journey tell us about the genre itself?
Well, the critiques definitely expand into questioning the show's actual value. And importantly, that documented decline in viewership. That tells a story about the genre too. After season 2, Netflix saw a pretty big drop from around 51 million households watching down to about 29 million. That's significant. And it certainly adds weight to the argument about why the format started changing and maybe why there's this uncertainty now about renewal. It signals that maybe the initial buzz didn't translate into sustained long-term popularity needed to keep churning it out unchanged. The Guardian, in that pretty biting review we mentioned, concluded the show just failed to ignite in later seasons, that it left audiences feeling frustrated. They even went so far as to call it a cheap Love Island knockoff, which implies that despite starting with a unique idea, maybe it struggled to maintain its own identity and keep people hooked long-term in a very crowded reality TV market. And then there's that whole really significant issue around the ethics of manufactured drama. The Tribune article really dug into this. It argued the show deliberately indulges in voyeurism and drama-laden guilty pleasure watching. How? Through things like overly sexually suggestive scenes and pretty clear producer manipulation, using activities like sensual workshops, body painting, things designed to force interaction and create specific kinds of content. The Tribune argues further that the combination of selective editing and snarky narrator often works together to make the contestants look detestable, that the show almost seems to enjoy their personal misery because it makes for easy punchlines for the audience. That raises some serious questions, right, about potentially exploiting people's vulnerabilities just for entertainment. Plus, they highlighted that potentially problematic message underneath it all, the idea that sexual acts are a barrier for emotional connection, which, as we said, feels like it subtly stigmatizes sex itself. Especially weird when the show actively recruits people who are interested in sexual flings and then essentially punishes them for acting on those interests. It creates this inherent clash between the show's stated purpose and how it actually operates.
That's a very pointed critique, yeah, about the ethics and how the drama's built. But what about representation, particularly around gender and sexuality? How does the show handle that, according to the critics?
That's another area where the Tribune offered some sharp criticism. They argued the show tends to fetishize its representations of queer relations. They gave a specific example, a kiss between Izzy and Georgia, 2 female contestants. The narrator apparently framed it not as potential intimacy, but as just an attention-seeking grab. And then it was followed by this cringy montage of the male contestants basically voicing their approval, ogling them. That kind of portrayal reduces queer intimacy to just a spectacle, seemingly for a straight male audience, rather than exploring it genuinely. It suggests that instead of celebrating diversity, the show might use it for shock value or titillation. The article also pointed out that, overall, the gender binary is still rigidly enforced. It's mostly men pursuing women, men competing with other men. Even with a diverse cast on paper, the show often ends up promoting pretty traditional, heteronormative ideas about relationships and attraction. which is a significant criticism for a show that claims it wants to challenge modern dating norms and push boundaries. It seems to fall back on some pretty old-fashioned tropes.
Okay, so pulling all of this together, what's the final takeaway here for you, the listener? What does this whole journey of Too Hot to Handle, from that unique concept through the struggles with authenticity, the critical backlash, the huge impact on contestants, what does it all reveal about reality dating TV as a genre? How much reality can there possibly be when the format, the casting, the editing, that whole post-show influencer machine all heavily shape the story we end up watching? It feels like such a delicate, maybe impossible dance between real human stuff and the demands of entertainment.
Yeah, I think if you connect all these dots, Too Hot to Handle really becomes a case study for this fundamental tension in modern entertainment. Is that constant push and pull between, on one side, the stated goal of showing deep emotional connection, and on the other, the undeniable, almost gravitational pull of trash TV, of manufactured drama. It really forces us as viewers to kind of question what we actually value when we watch these shows. Are we tuning in hoping for real love stories, real growth? Or are we maybe more drawn to the spectacle, the drama of people messing up under pressure, even with all the ethical questions that raises? The show's whole arc, from this revolutionary idea to a format now under intense scrutiny, it just highlights that ongoing battle, and maybe how difficult it is for any reality show to perfectly balance those two, often conflicting desires in the long run, especially when that line between entertainment and maybe exploitation gets so blurry.
And that seems like a fitting place to wrap up our deep dive into Too Hot to Handle.
Wow. We've covered a lot from that big question about Season 7, right through to those incredible candid insights from the stars themselves, and looking hard at the critical perspectives on its format and its wider impact. It's definitely clear this show is, well, more than just a guilty pleasure. It's a really complex mirror reflecting our desires, maybe our anxieties, and this ever-shifting media world where authenticity and entertainment are constantly wrestling.
Indeed. And despite all the flaws people point out, despite the sometimes shocking ways contestants' lives change, despite the ethical debates, the fact that the show still has this enduring appeal, that tells us something powerful, doesn't it? About human nature, maybe. Our collective fascination with watching love, temptation, connection play out under this intense microscope. It reflects back at us what we find compelling, maybe for better or for worse. So, as always, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on. Given how deeply viewers do seem to engage with shows like this and how profoundly the contestants' actual lives are altered by the experience, does that social experiment label on reality TV still hold up? Does it genuinely achieve its stated purpose, fostering deeper connections, changing behaviors? Or has it maybe mostly evolved into something else? A really sophisticated, highly monetized machine for creating personalities and launching careers? And maybe more importantly, what impact does that complex dynamic, the blend of experiment, entertainment, and career launchpad have on your own perception of relationships, of authenticity, and of what fame even means in today's media landscape? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We really hope you're leaving feeling a little more informed and definitely a lot more curious.